You knew the situation. You knew we were her last option, and you still nearly backed out.
But I didn't.
But you would have. See, you're just a gaijin. You will never understand how things work here.
You're right, I am Gaijin, but Japan is my home now. And I want to try to understand.
This was really just my writing partner, Steven, was just randomly looking for a job for American to do in Japan. And there's a cuddling service, there was a renting a girlfriend service, there's a butler cafe service, and the rental family business just popped up. And I never heard of it before. He came to me and was like, do you know this, anything about this? I was like, I never heard it before. So I immediately, like, there's something very interesting there. But what I really wanted to know was why this business exists, right? Like, what kind of people use this service and why it exists in Japan. But as we were digging in, we realized that this service itself started in the 80s, and there's about 300 companies currently providing similar services. So that was kind of like our starting point to see what's there. In Japanese culture, for example, there's a word called honne to tatemae. Honne is a true feeling, and tatemae is a facade. We're taught to keep our true feeling to ourselves, and then just live, don't show any emotions, and that's kind of culturally how we were taught since young age, to maintain the harmony. So because of it, many people tend to suppress their own true feeling, as you can imagine. And there are, I would say, a little bit more, perhaps, people with depression or, emotional, how to say, let me just go like this. So because of the honne to tatemae, there are people who may perhaps don't really know how to take care of their own needs emotionally. And I don't want to say like a mental illness, but the therapy system for people who are depressed and it makes it a little bit challenging for the people to connect. So rental family basically come in and just be there for you, just even for 2 hours. They're just there to talk or whatever you ask them to do. And yeah, I think that's the people who really just wants to connect. And I feel like not only in Japan, but just kind of around the world, it feels like people are so disconnected at this, in this age. This technology, advancement of technology is really putting us, separate too. So particularly in Japan, for the reason as I mentioned, was a really main reason that these things exist. We had a lot of different versions, and my experience being exchange students living in Utah when I first came to America, I was pretty much the only Asian girl in the whole entire room. But what happened was that during that time, while I was feeling so lonely and so isolated, I met so many incredible people. Just all my friends that I met then are still my dear friends to this day, and I really consider it as my family. So I wanted to kind of flip the idea and make the Philip, our protagonist, what does it look like to live in Japan, this American guy, and surrounded by Japanese culture, and how this story goes. So for me, was really focusing on who this lead character is at first. We were thinking, could it be a girl or should it be a boy, man or woman? And then from there, we just kind of had his story, and obviously rental family cannot just exist as one-on-one, so there's going to be multiple characters that I wanted to include. And the individual characters also have a certain, a mission. In my mind, the message that I want to share with the audience, and every single character kind of carries importance in this society right now, and the message I want to give it to the people from around the world. So, yeah, I think that from there we just built what individuals do, what his story is, but Philip's story was really about he's kind of living the life that he always wished to have. yet he didn't get married, and he gets to get married. He never had a child, so he gets to have a child. He never had a good relationship with his own father, so he gets to have somebody who's kind of becomes his surrogate father. Even though he's becoming a surrogate, he is actually finding connections through the clients, and they're kind of helping each other in a way. So with that story, I just kind of, everybody else was just, puzzle. It was a lot of puzzle. At one point, Philip played a waiter at Butler Cafe, and he gets fired because he's too old now, replaced by a younger man. And to the jobs that perhaps Aiko's character discuss about, which it's not in the movie, but we kind of pulled idea from what actually happened in the job, and we did a lot of intensive interviews and researches, both in English and Japanese, and because I really wanted the story to be authentic and real. So there's a couple ideas that I kind of pulled from what actually really happened in the rental family business, and then made it into our own story for each character to tell. I think every character in Rental Family is taking every single job as serious as he can get. If you look at Philip, he's 100% in, and he's just not quite sure if he belongs here, if he's doing what he's supposed to do, but once he's in, right? So even those comedic moments, every single character, like for example, some of the moments that it's quite, we get a lot of laugh from people around the world, and at the end of when all of them comes in disguised to help Philip, they're all there to do a real job. Like they're there to really, they're there with all seriousness trying to help Philip. But for me, I'm such a nerd when it comes to cameras, and I used to be a cinematographer, and I still like to play with camera and lenses, and those are things that I'm constantly thinking about. So just choosing the right, what kind of lenses, choosing what kind of shots that I, in this particular moment, while the actors are playing completely serious scenes, I'll just switch around a little bit in how I show each moment, how long I wanted to keep in editing, and that kind of helped me to, build the comedic moments versus the other side. Some of the scenes can be a little bit more, sentimental, or if you will say it. But it's really about all the character being in the moment and discovering what is important for their clients to experience or provide, job for them, provide the service for their characters. This movie was very, I've written, short film to feature film. Obviously, this is my second feature, but this was a lot of things that I really wanted to incorporate as far as, also the message goes. I wanted to bring some social stigma, what's happening in the world right now, but not to hammer with too seriousness, but just have a light heart, so that an audience can actually easier to take in, and then really digest much easier. That was kind of my goal. So, yeah. Almost exactly 3 years ago, I was attending this screening, and I saw him in The Well, and I thought, obviously, I always love what he's done in his past, but this particular role he played, Charlie, it was just so vulnerable, and he just grabbed me by my heart, which he's done to everybody, I'm sure. And I just kept imagining, like, wow, what if Brendan played this role, and he already had a depth in this particular role, and I was so moved by it. But what really made me made me really say, yes, he's the one was who he was. He showed up on this giant screen, because he couldn't show up because he got sick, and he did a Q&A on this 30-feet screen, and he was just like, hello, being Brendan, who, as he does on everything. He's so charming, so caring, so kind, and so vulnerable, and I just felt like he had everything that I was looking for in Philip's personality, and yeah, I was like, after that, I was like, we gotta call Brendan and see what they say. He was like, let's meet. You know, took a little bit longer because he was on the race for, he was basically pulled everywhere for the Oscar that year. So we had to wait a little bit until Oscar was over and, you know, all that stuff. But by the time we got to meet, we spent about 5 hours at a coffee shop in New York City. He said that he would love to meet. So I got so nervous. I flew over, met with him, and for 5 hours we did not talk anything about movie. We just talked about life. And as time was going down, I'm thinking like, oh no, I probably should talk about movie at this point. And I was like, so by the way, do you like the script? And he says, consider I'm doing the job, please. I love the script and let's do it. So that was the beginning of it. He was very, you know, from what I heard was he was very careful what he wanted to do next. And, you know, I think every time when you finish the next movie, finish our movie, it's always what's next, right? That's just, you know, that's in our business. And he was really looking for something that resonate with him, and he loves Japan already, so it was a yes. Going to a different country, he was yes on that. And you know, I got really lucky, I really think. Sometimes it's hard for people to go overseas for such a, you know, long time, and I think he ended up being there for like 5-6 months. He portrayed this one character who, his journey really is about somebody who's missing, have so much things that is missing in his life, including connecting with people. He's very isolated. He's a lonely man who doesn't really have friends or family around. And just building to that, to how he becomes at the end of the day, at the end of the movie, where he's much more open and he's willing to do anything at this point. He's ready for the world, you know. I think the most difficult scene was, I must say for me, it was the cherry blossom scene, maybe. That was because, again, it's such an easy way to say, because he'd done something terrible to a child, right? Like anybody, nobody wants to admit that he lied to a child. And the way that he had to say, I'm sorry, you know, it couldn't just be like one tone. I was like, you know, he can't be very apologetic. He just kind of have to play this really balanced. And then the Mia, little girl, also have to respond. And yes, I hate you for what you did, but I also missed you, you know, that just a fine balance. We talked through it, and we did a couple different takes as we were fighting with the sun. And I just remember just finding that fine balance of, yes, I forgive you, and I kind of missed you being my dad. That was kind of, I wouldn't say difficult, but it was very sensitive to the point where I wanted to play it perfectly. So it took a little longer. It's interesting because that little girl is kind of my experience. My mom used to lie to me all the time. She told me my father was dead. I found out he wasn't. It's okay, it's funny. This is the part that you laugh. And everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was like, no, it's okay. And after all that stuff that I experienced, and you know, her lying, my dad was dead. At one point, he was like, no, he's like that guy who was on this television. He was the most handsome actor, and I thought that he was my dad for like 6 months. But I think at the end of the day, what I learned is, you know, she was doing everything the best, whatever she can do to protect me, right? Because she really cared for me, and she didn't want to perhaps introduce about my father figure, who she didn't quite feel, you know, safe person to share about. And one thing I remember, she said, do you love me? Am I giving you enough love? And I said, yes, you have been. And are you happy with how am I treating you? And I said, yes. And, you know, my dad, maybe your father wasn't the nicest guy. So maybe it's okay that you don't know him. And if that's okay with you. And then, you know, she was like, am I giving you enough love? And I was like, yeah, of course. And it's like, you know, let me know if I'm doing something, you know, not giving you enough care or attention. And I was like, no. And he's like, okay. then I was like, okay, great. Then I have nothing to, you know, I just kind of left it at that, and I never felt like I needed to ask more questions. So anyway, going back to the little girl, she, I felt like the way she is exactly how I would act, how I acted, and but also I wanted to make sure that the care from the mom, the single mom who really cares for her future, is all there. And she also didn't want the little girl to lie to the teacher, so instead she took that, part of lying, even though some people may not agree that's a good idea. So yeah, I just wanted to portray this love in a very unconventional, weird way, in a Japanese way. Yeah, I think Japanese, I think a lot of Asian culture, they really care for their children's, education. Maybe a little too early, my opinion, but and then Japanese culture, sometimes they don't accept single parent, and that's also a kind of issue that I wanted to address. You write what you know also, but I also wanted the story to be authentic and to be as close to be as real. And that's why doing an interview and talking to people, and that was also an important process for me, because I just didn't want to make it up, It's just be very easy. I think rental family story itself, or the business itself, could be easily misunderstood and taken it very light, or just take it as like, oh, this is a weird business that just exists in Japan. But it's actually, there's more to, so much more to that. I think, not, again, like I mentioned, the Japanese people has a little bit more difficulty to reach out to therapists, for example. It's not as accessible to people who has a depression, or so as this business comes in, they are there to help, of anybody. If you need help, you just raise your hands and we'll be there for you, right? Even though you're paying hourly. So I think for me, like, it's so important to anybody who's having that issue right now. If you feel like you're lonely and you're stuck and you feel like you're the only one, it really isn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just to know that you do have to take the first step, right? You can't just rely on everybody else. I strongly, encourage everybody to just take the first step, see the world from a different perspective, just go up the ladder, because then you're gonna see a completely different point of view. But you have to do that first step, right? And once that happens, then people's gonna be there for you. I think rental family, for example, you may not relate it to them, obviously they're not related to them, but they're there for you. We're the one who has to be open to that relationship. And also I believe that sometimes the blood-related relationship, some people don't have a perfect relationship, and then that's okay. You just kind of send this energy of, say thank you for giving a birth, or thank you for whatever, depending on who you're talking to, and then send that good vibe, But then just pull back and just send appreciation. But then just when you look at your life and say, who are you surrounded by? Your best friend, your co-worker, your colleagues, to your neighbors. They could be your family too, right? So just know that people are there for you. And then also we have to be there for each other too. So the community I want to create through this movie, and I hope people get that. When you make movies, you just don't expect anything, and all I can do is hope. I hope that my message comes through the story, through each character, but just really to receive those recognitions, it's just nothing more than just telling me that the people perhaps is really looking for these connections and being vulnerable. It's open, I think. This technology, we're constantly on this phone talking to this, or checking on other people's lives, and I think what we really need is, this connection. It's not about comparing yourself with everybody else, but just somebody to be there to say, we're good. Let's just go have a good day today. Even that connection is very important. The validation of who we are as a human being, and just it's kind of like without this connection, I don't think we kind of exist as a whole, and we're not reaching a potential as individual human beings. I have so many favorite moments. For example, I love when Aiko stands up for herself, because that her character represent, for me, is all of us. I mean, every character represents all of us, in some part in us that represent, right? But for Aiko particularly, I'm hoping that the people perhaps in a situation where you feel like you cannot voice your opinion, yes, you can. You can voice your opinion, and you should voice your opinion, because what happened is that now even the boss, somebody like Tada, has something learned from it, and he makes the action, right? Unless you make an action, nothing is going to continue. So for me, Aiko represent all of us, but especially for the people, girls or boys, people who just need to, more so than that, like stand up for themselves. And I love that scene. I also, obviously, I love Kiko's moment when he finds his time capsule, because that's the part that way we all kind of look back and say, are we living? That moment was actually questioning. To me, it was a just live without regret. If there's something that you feel like you left back, let's just take care of it as you go. I mean, it's very different because he's going back and seeing the pictures and all of it. But there's a regret that he couldn't do. So for me, again, just take that. Just like live your life as we make a progress every day. Let's just make sure that you are following what you love to do, and there's nothing that you want to go back and say, oh, I wish I did that. Let's just take care of it now. I really love the moment when three boys, the Aiko, Kota, and Tada shows up as disguised. I don't know if I should talk about this, like how much I can talk about it. But yeah, I really like that moment because they all came together as a family to really rescue Philip. I think that's a beautiful moment that it resonates with me even then. And I remember when I wrote the script and I was like, this is gonna be so good. Philip is doing great. If there's a sequel, I actually had a moment where like, should we shoot a scene where Philip and Mia becomes like, working in the rental family business, and they're like showing up people's door and say, hey, I'm here, we're home. I think that'd be a really cute place. But I think there's, Philip has definitely learned to really embrace for who he is, and then just enjoy life, and one day at a time. And so, yeah. I actually would love to play the role for anybody if you ask me. I'll be happy to do that, except I do not want to do apologize service, because that's the reason I put in the movie, because, there are, obviously those people exist and that use this service particularly to have somebody else apologize for things that they haven't done, And that was kind of, for me, was say, hey, someone's gonna come back to you if you don't, do it, take care of it right. Like, you gotta sometimes face that reality. You need to take care of it. Don't be shady human being. So except for that role, I'll play anything else.